our stable-born King. While helping her mother one Christmas, a little girl asked about the meaning of Christmas. And the mother told her that Christmas was the time of the year that we celebrated the birth of Jesus, God's Son. And the little girl asked her mother why Jesus didn't get the presents, because it was his birthday after all. And the mother explained the tradition of gift exchange as one way of showing love for one another, and the matter was dropped at that. The evening before Christmas, the little girl brought a gift-wrapped package from her room and placed it under the tree. "What's in the box?" her mother asked. "A gift for Jesus. I'm leaving it under the tree so he can open it tonight while I'm sleeping." And the mother did not want her daughter to be disappointed, and so during the night she opened the package. But there wasn't anything in it. The next morning her daughter raced into the living room to see if her package had been opened, and it had. And she shouted to her mother, "Jesus opened my package last night. He opened my present." The mystified mother, she walked over to her daughter and she asked what she had given Jesus. And the little girl explained, "Well, I figured that Jesus has about everything he needs. And I can't give him much because I'm just a little girl. But there's one thing that I could give him. And so I decided to give him a box of love." This little girl honored the stable-born King with her gift of a box of love. Isaiah prophesied a long time ago, before Jesus was even born, 500 years plus, of a king. Isaiah was an 8th century BC prophet who did a much better job at getting to the heart of who it is we see pictured in the hay on Christmas cards. Jesus is God's solution to a desperate situation. The context of this prophecy is one of unexpected sunlight. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. You see, at the time of Isaiah's writing, Assyria was closing in on Israel. They were going to attack. There would be no divine intervention from God. Isaiah prophesied to a cocky king and his defiant people that judgment was coming. But went on to anticipate a day when God's salvation would come in an unexpected way, from an unexpected place. Galilee of the Gentiles. If you want to put it in another way, the other side of the tracks. The people were to rejoice in their political and spiritual freedom when God provided them salvation. But this salvation would come in the person of a king. Not just any king, but a stable-born king. In Isaiah 9, 6, and 7, he makes it clear that who this king was going to be, or what this king was going to be. It says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Within this passage, we see Isaiah giving to this king 4 titles. We read there, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. These titles aren't just mere titles. They're attributes by which he would be known among his people, among those who call him king. And these titles, they're not insignificant, not an afterthought. They are central to who Jesus was. They are not the qualities that you would automatically associate with just any king or queen. The first title, Wonderful Counselor, brings to mind the compassionate nature of a king. And out of his compassionate character comes the Wonderful Counselor that guides, advises, and draws close to us as we seek to honor our stable-born king. However, even in the midst of him being a counselor, he is also sovereign and he's in control. That's why he is mighty God. You see, some kings and Caesars of ancient world proudly viewed themselves as gods, to be worshipped by the people. But Isaiah claimed that the king he had in mind is mighty God. He is Messiah. He is God in the flesh. This deliverer is the long-awaited Messiah, whose origins are from the beginning of time. Isaiah then says that the king of Israel's future will be an everlasting father. Though he would be given to them as a son, the fact that he is himself God would be clear in his rule over the nations. He would be everlasting. This king would always be the father of his people. And so they would always be certain of their identity as his children. And then Isaiah goes on to call him the Prince of Peace. Though a king, he would stoop to the role of prince as a means of accomplishing the longed-for truce between warring nations and divided hearts. The king who would come from Galilee would be unlike any other king in Israel, or any other nation for that matter. He would be known as Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Back in 1948, I want to show you a picture of Elizabeth II. The future Queen of England gave birth to her first son. What was his name? Charles. There he is, bouncing baby boy, handsome little fella. Well, by virtue of being a grandson of the reigning king, George VI, this newborn baby was a prince. One day, maybe, if Elizabeth ever decides to pass along the throne to him, he is to become King of England. But the baby prince was not a king when he took his first breath. He was merely a prince who would one day become a king. That's the way it is in any society that has a king or a queen. But not so with the one that Isaiah wrote to us about. When Jesus was born, he was already a king. He was a stable-born king. He was Messiah. He was already the anointed king over Israel. He was the Son of God. And at his royal wish, the universe came into being, as I had shared with you last week. Instead of a prince who would become a king, here was a king who was to become a Prince of Peace. And many of our Christmas cards that arrive at our homes this season will have a picture of Jesus as a baby in a manger, a baby with his mother surrounded by barnyard animals. And it's true, He was a baby. But the message of Christmas is so much more than that. Some of those Christmas cards portrayed the baby Jesus with a halo over his head in an attempt to say that he was more than just an ordinary baby. I found a picture here where he's glowing even. But a halo or the glow doesn't quite do it. He was more than a child. He was God present. And he would overcome impossible odds to leave his fingerprints, his footsteps in the sand of time, and his fingerprints on our hearts. You see, you don't just honor or accommodate someone whose titles are Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. The only option in the presence of true royalty is to show honor. And so, the question is, how do we honor our stable-born King? If he is King, and truly King of our hearts, how do we honor him? I would say the first way to honor our stable-born King is to begin with acknowledging who Jesus is. That he's not only the sweet little baby boy, he is the most powerful King the world has ever known. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And that's why he deserves our close attention this Advent season. As the old Christmas hymn, Who is he in yonder stall? It says, he is the Lord, the King of glory. He is the Lord, O wondrous story. At his feet we humbly fall. Crown him Lord of all. You see, we crown him Lord of all with an attitude of worship and reverence and awe. We give to him our hearts. Another way to honor the King is to take his birthday seriously. In other words, we give the day more than just a token tip of the hat. A 7-year-old by the name of Johnny, he yelled at his dad, "Daddy, guess what's missing?" The place rang with excitement as the family put up their life-sized manger scene on the lawn. And he said, "What?" to his son, as he fastened Joseph to the pole for support. Johnny said, "The baby Jesus is missing." "Daddy, if we can't find Jesus, there's no need for us to put up the manger scene at all. Without Jesus, it's nothing." You see, if we cannot include Jesus in our Christmas, then why are we celebrating Christmas? Christmas without Christ is just an empty celebration with really no hope and just stuff. However, if we determine that it will be more than just presents under the tree, if we determine to take intentional strides, to take intentional steps, that Jesus would be the centerpiece of our celebration and not just an add-on, well, then we need to ask ourselves a question. How do we honor our stable-born King? How do we honor him? How do we choose to separate his birthday from the blur of what's called the holidays? Well, I want to suggest to you another way to honor our wonderful counselor, our mighty God, our everlasting Father and Prince of Peace, is choose a birthday gift for him. However, we need to choose it carefully. Jesus cares so much for what we bring to Christmas and the attitude in which we come. So what will we give Jesus as a personalized expression of our love? The little girl brought to him a box of love. But how do we give to him that love? Sometime at this time of year, down in the States, governors will do an interesting thing. They'll offer clemency to prisoners. That means that some prisoners they will release. early. Let them go free. They'll give them a pardon. As a Christmas gift, well, they're set free. Is it possible that Jesus would have you free somebody else, to forgive somebody, to honor our King, to offer clemency to somebody in our lives, to set a person free in our hearts from an outstanding debt you feel he or she owes you? Maybe it's forgiveness. Or, how about this? If you regularly go to church each week, maybe you could give Jesus the gift of reading through the Bible this year. Or, if you've gotten out of the habit of going to church regularly, perhaps you could plan to give Jesus that 1 hour each week to make worship a regular event. I think that's a gift that our King would really enjoy. Maybe you could increase your offering this year by $5 a week. It's all about taking time to contemplate what would be an acceptable birthday gift to express your devotion to our King of Kings. To show your devotion to our Almighty King. Have you ever actually asked Jesus, Jesus, I'd really like to give you a good gift. What would you like? Have you ever asked him that in prayer and then listened? Well, I want to do that this morning. I want to take about 20 seconds just to ask the question, for you to silently ask the question and then just listen. See what comes to the surface. See what impression he places in your mind. What could you do in the next several days or in the next couple of weeks or over the next year that would really make his day? Let's pray together silently as we listen. So what did Jesus say? Did he want you to give money to that person who you know is in need? Did he put someone on your mind that he may want you to visit? Did he nudge your heart to lay down a grudge that you've been holding on to? Did he silently whisper that he'd love for you sometime during the Christmas season to share with a family member how much he means to you? What Jesus wants from some of us this Christmas is control of our lives. To give him our heart and honor him as our stable-born King. To express our adoration to him, our love to him on his birthday. There was a military expert who was once asked to deliver a speech in St. Louis, Missouri. It was during World War II, and he had a difficult time getting a seat on a plane. However, he secured and he departed from his hometown in Boston to head to Missouri. Well, he had a layover in Washington, D.C., where they were picking up some other people. And at Washington, D.C., being a military plane, he was bummed because there was a general who decided that he wanted his seat, and disgruntled and frustrated, the would-be lecturer sat and cooled his heels while his plane left for Missouri. He couldn't deliver that speech. Well, his disappointment was nothing compared to the general's disgust when he arrived in St. Louis, Missouri, to hear a good lecture from a guy that was coming from Boston, only to find out that he had actually bumped him off the plane in Washington, D.C. You see, the story points out an interesting question for our Advent season. Are our presents to one another taking his place in our midst? What has top priority for us this Christmas? And before it's too late, because we still have, as Larry told me, there's still, how many days? 21 days before Christmas. Still got time. Before it's too late, let's honor our stable-born King by giving him first place in our hearts and in our celebrations. For he is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Let's pray together.